Hi everyone, this is First Lady Tammy Murphy. Welcome to the inaugural Climate Summit, hosted in partnership with the Drumthwacket Foundation, Atlantic City Electric, Exelon, and Sustainable Jersey. This Climate Summit kicks off our New Jersey Student Climate Challenge program. For decades, environmentalists have worked hard to share the message that every one of us has a role to play in preserving our planet. From the products that we buy, to our mode of transportation, and our participation in recycling programs, our individual choices have always mattered. But from this point forward, the actions taken by New Jersey students will carry even more significance. This is because, as of last June, New Jersey became the first state in the nation to incorporate climate change across all K-12 education standards. Climate change is going to affect every aspect of our lives, no matter what career you choose. Engineer, fashion designer, pilot, insurance broker, climate literacy will be a necessary and invaluable part of your education. And since New Jersey is the first state to take this important step, you will be uniquely positioned and empowered to be the leaders of our nation's green economy. Your generation's motivation and advocacy around this issue has been nothing short of powerful. The governor and I are convinced, given the background, education, and tools, there is nothing that you cannot achieve. As we begin this endeavor, I encourage each of you to participate in the climate contest and look forward to seeing your creativity, passion, and advocacy in action. Thank you so much for attending, and I wish you all the best of luck for a successful and engaging Climate Summit.
Hello, I'm Dave Velasquez, President and CEO of Pepco Holdings, the parent company of Atlantic City Electric, your local energy provider. I'm excited to welcome you to the New Jersey Student Climate Challenge Summit. I want to thank New Jersey First Lady Tammy Murphy, the Drumthwacket Foundation, and Sustainable Jersey for facilitating the Climate Challenge, and also for leading New Jersey's efforts to make young people like you more aware of the climate crisis we're all facing and inspired to act. As you participate in this summit and start to think about how climate change is impacting your community and your climate change project, I thought it might be helpful to share my perspective by answering a few questions about climate change I've received from students in southern New Jersey.
Why is it important for us to take action on climate change?
Climate change is one of the most important issues we're facing right now. It has the potential to impact us like few other issues. In southern New Jersey, we're already seeing that, whether it's more devastating hurricanes, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's rising sea levels, it's already having an impact. But I view it not only as a challenge, but also as an opportunity for us. We have a chance to create a more sustainable energy grid. We've got a chance to use that sustainable energy grid to provide local benefits and better air quality for all of our residents, but also to create jobs in southern New Jersey as we work to create this smarter, healthier grid for our customers.
What is Atlantic City Electric doing to reduce the effects of climate change?
Atlantic City Electric is going to be a critical partner in helping reduce the impacts of climate change. I think, as most of you know, we're the company that owns the power lines and all the equipment you see that brings energy into all the homes and businesses across southern New Jersey. That grid is a critical platform to be able to connect our customers to cleaner energy solutions. Let me give you a couple examples of how we're using our platform, our grid, to help power cleaner energy solutions for customers. Just think about all the solar panels you see being put up on homes and businesses. It's our grid that's connecting those. Think about the electric vehicles that people are beginning to buy, that the electric buses or electric school buses that are beginning to be purchased as well. It's our grid that powers them, it's our grid that connects them. In addition to that, we're also working with customers so they use less energy through energy efficiency programs across the state. All these are ways in which our platform is so important to help us combat climate change.
One question: what can students do to take action on climate change?
We can all take action to help combat climate change. And in fact, not only can we all need to. And it's never too early to start. You may think you're just students, but you too have a very critical role to play in this. You are the leaders of tomorrow, and leaders of tomorrow start to develop today. You have a unique opportunity at this summit to hear from experts around this. I encourage you, ask hard questions, learn what you can, take that knowledge, help it as you work to develop your projects. And then when you're finished with your projects, the work doesn't stop there. Take what you've learned back into your circles of friends and family and community. Be an advocate. Make sure you take action even in small ways, even if it's as simple as changing light bulbs for LED bulbs, increasing the recycling you're doing, just a couple ways, small ways that we all can help combat climate change. Thank you for these great questions. I know our future is bright with students like you leading the way. I hope you enjoy the summit, and I wish you the best of luck as you embark on your climate challenge projects. I'm looking forward to seeing the amazing solutions you bring to life. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Student Climate Challenge. I'm Randy Solomon, and I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Jersey and the Sustainability Institute at the College of New Jersey. And I'm actually live with you here today. I want to apologize in advance for any interruptions. My kids know that when I'm speaking live to someone is the exact right time to ask if they can have more video game time. So again, I apologize in advance if something like that happens. For those of you who don't know, Sustainable Jersey is a free certification program for cities, towns, and schools. We develop solutions to climate change and other big problems, and we make implementing those solutions into a game and a competition statewide. So if you implement solutions in your community, you score points. And if you score enough points, you can be certified as a sustainable school. Acting with state government agencies, community groups, higher education, business leaders, and schools, we develop solutions for the climate crisis that can be implemented locally by volunteers like you. We provide free training and technical assistance to help you do it. 81% of New Jersey's cities and towns and 60% of the public school districts are currently participating in the program and eligible for our help, which includes grants. And if you don't know, a grant is where you tell us what you want to do, and we write you a check to do it. To date, we've awarded $5.6 million in grants to communities all over New Jersey. So out of curiosity, before we get too far, could I see a show of hands for everyone who's actually heard of Sustainable Jersey before this event? I think everyone, I see 3 hands, 5. Does everyone know how to click the raise your hand option? All right, there we go. So we see a fair number of people. Oh, it's going up. That's great. All right, real quick, question 2. Raise your hand again if your school or the community that you live in is participating in Sustainable Jersey or is actually certified. Not bad, 13 people. So the Sustainable Jersey is focused on supporting local actions, and yeah, you can put your hands down. Thank you so much. So we're focused on supporting local actions to address climate and other critical, not just environmental, but also economic and social challenges that we face. I want to thank our program partners. I can't thank them enough. Atlantic City Electric, the Exelon Foundation, and the Drumthwacket Foundation for sponsoring the New Jersey Student Climate Challenge. Because again, and you're going to hear this again and again, climate change is the biggest challenge the world faces and that we face. And we in New Jersey are going to be on the front lines of dealing with these impacts and implementing the solutions. Climate change is not just about polar bears or melting glaciers. It's about extreme heat here in New Jersey. It's about flooding here in New Jersey. It's about how we connect to the world. For example, New Jersey doesn't grow enough food to feed our people here in New Jersey. There's only 3 days worth of food in grocery stores. The food comes from all over the world, and that food all over the world is under threat from climate change. everything we do impacts everywhere else. And we are impacted by the things that occur all over the world. We live in a global economy. So dealing with climate change is about whether or not we're going to have a future. And what your generation decides to do about climate change is going to be critical to determining that future. That's why we made this challenge, just for you. Our hope is that you're going to take advantage of all the Climate Summit sessions in person or by viewing the recordings, and then team up with a small group of your fellow students to select a project in your home, in your school, in your community to implement as part of this climate contest. I know that all the program participants agree with what First Lady Tammy Murphy said. There's nothing that New Jersey students can't achieve. There's an old proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Well, the second best time is now. We all know that we should have been tackling climate change for the past 20 years. But here we are today, right now. This is our moment. We want to give you the tools, the opportunity, and the help to dive in right now and make a difference and start shaping that future right now. So thank you all again, and we look forward to the wonderful things that you do. And now I'd like to introduce Natasha Iqbal, a key member of the Climate Change Planning Committee, and thank her for taking the time out of her busy schedule to help make the climate change a rewarding experience for South Jersey students. Natasha?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natasha Iqbal, and I'm currently a senior at Egg Harbor Township High School. Currently, I also serve as the student ambassador for the New Jersey Climate Change Challenge. To get to know everyone a little bit more, why don't you all type your school in the chat? Make sure when you're going to type in the chat to select the panelists and attendees option above the chat box when sending it. There you go, Winslow, Williamstown, hello everyone. Highland, Sovereign, Infinity Middle School, Berlin Community, EHS, oh my God, hi. Winslow, all right, a lot of Winslow Township, Williams Township. All right, great to meet you all. I would like to thank you again for joining us as we dive into the biggest problem facing our generation today, climate change. No matter where you live, what you do, or who you are, climate change is affecting you and the people you love. So today, I call upon you all to find your why. Why do you need to take on the challenge of climate change? For me, one of my biggest whys is because I want to protect my beautiful hometown from disaster. Growing up along the coastline of New Jersey, I spent my summers at the beach with my family. The salty wind blowing through my hair as I foraged the sand for shiny seashells. The blissful sound of the waves crashing in the morning as I stroll along the shore. The golden glimmer of the sun that casts upon me as my friends gather around to enjoy the view. These moments made my childhood so very special to me. But soon, these memories will stay just that if America continues progressing the way that it currently is. According to Dr. Harold Wanless, an expert on the rising of sea levels, most islands surrounding New Jersey will be underwater in only 5 decades. Not only would your favorite vacation spots cease to exist, but people's homes, businesses, entire lives would be absolutely destroyed. And this effect would continue to devastate not only the rest of New Jersey, but as well as other states that border the ocean and other countries as well, unless we all come together and start doing something about it now. And that's what the climate change challenge is all about, starting now and what we can start doing now to address climate change. All of us can be powerful influences in our families, schools, community, state, and nationally to take this crisis seriously. The climate challenge is designed to give you the knowledge, skills, and resources to become engaged. During this session, we will quickly review the causes and impacts of climate change, and then Caroline Lewis from the Clio Institute, which stands for Climate Leaders Engagement Opportunities, will share her thoughts and reflections on the young people and their ability to change the world. But before we get started, I want to encourage you to share your thoughts, comments, and questions. You have already been using the chat feature to answer our questions like which school are you from, and also the raise hand button. Please be active in the chat, letting us know what you think and responding to the speaker's questions. However, we want to make sure we answer specific questions you have for the speakers as well. So please put your questions in for the speakers in the Q&A box. And if you see a question that you particularly are interested in, or that someone else put in, please like it so we can answer those questions of the most interest to all of you. Renee Hayter and Heather McCall from Sustainable Jersey will be working behind the scenes to monitor the chat and questions box. So now I am happy to introduce Dr. Andrea Drewes, a former middle school teacher, now professor at Rider University, who has focused her career on climate education.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Andrea Drewes, as Natasha said, and there are so many great organizations working on climate change that have prepared a number of free resources to kind of better explain the science of climate change. And we thought we would start with a few excerpts of a great video called Our Climate, Our Future, which is produced by the Alliance for Climate Education. I will put in the chat the link to the whole 40-minute video in a moment or two if you'd like to watch all of it at another time. Also, I want to encourage you to use that Q&A box if you have any questions that may arise, and we'll do our best to answer them in a few minutes. But now let's get started with a few video clips.
I'm Shar, and this is Chance, and we're with ACE. We're here to tell you
and show you
the truth about climate change, the most epic challenge our generation faces.
We're gonna see why the story of climate change isn't just about melting glaciers or disappearing polar bears.
And it's not just about a more dangerous world for far-off future generations.
Climate change is really a story about us. See, it's young people who are going to be the most affected if climate change gets out of hand.
And it's young people who have the most power to step up and create a solution to halt climate change before it's too late.
Look, this is a big problem, but we've solved big problems before, right?
We're humans. We've created the world as we know it by using our big brains and our big hearts to solve big problems.
But the problem of climate change is different because it's mostly been invisible. Even though almost every scientist says the climate is changing dangerously and humans are causing it, we're not doing enough to stop it because most of us don't see it.
And that's what all this stuff is for. We're gonna take the best of what science knows to help you see it, so you can choose what to do about it.
We can take you anywhere and any when. Even into futures that might never exist. Or scales so small, you'd need to be a molecule to see what's going on. Ah!
We're gonna show you the world as it is, and the world you can create.
This is Our Climate, Our Future. We're gonna start this story at a time and place you know well, right here and right now, with you. Check this out. Today, you're part of an America that's all about living large. No, not like that. Even though you may not feel like it, just by living in the US, we're all living large. What I mean is, we each take up a ton of space. That's not easy to see because our feet only cover a little bit of ground. Your room and your stuff cover a little more. You count your home and, well, yeah, you take up some space. But then there's all the space you use that you never see. Like the space in Iowa it takes to grow your food. Or in China, where factories make your stuff. Or in the Middle East, where we get fuel for your car. And then there's all that space it takes to dump your garbage and pollution. You see, everything you buy, use, and eventually throw away has to come from somewhere and go somewhere. And you take up that space too.
everyone lives large?
Well, yeah. Whether you live on a giant ranch or in a little apartment, whether your family's loaded or not even close, if you live in the US right now, you're living pretty large. Can you believe that the average American uses about 16 football fields worth of Earth's resources to live? That's almost twice someone living in Italy, 3 times someone living in Mexico, and 8 times someone living in India.
Wow, really?
Now, this isn't your fault. You were born into a world made by your parents and their parents, so you kind of got stuck living this way. Add that to the fact that every day since you were a little kid, advertisers have been telling you that you could be cooler if you had more, making you want to live as large as you can. Did you know that if everyone in the world lived like Americans, we would need 5 planet Earths?
We only have one. Living large means we're taking up way more than our fair share of space and resources. But there's an even bigger, more invisible problem here. Growing our food, making all our stuff, moving ourselves around, powering our large lives, all takes a ton of energy. And today, most of that energy comes from burning something called fossil fuels: coal, oil, and natural gas.
And burning fossil fuels, we now know, is what's causing our planet's temperature to rise so quickly. It's the main reason we're facing climate change.
That video really got me thinking about how many of us live large. Let's have a quick poll question.
All right, take a minute and vote. What do you think? What did the video say? How many Earths will we need to have enough resources if the whole world lived like Americans? All right, good. Lots of votes coming in. Thank you very much. All right, looking good. Okay, I see a couple of numbers battling it out. Get your vote in now. All right, get those last votes in. They're gonna close it. All right. So we can see that it is 5. So 5 is the correct answer. So great job paying attention, everyone. And Natasha, what does it mean when the video just said that just by living in the United States, we're all living large?
Our lives require a lot of energy and resources. Energy and materials to make all of our stuff, energy to get us around and heat our homes, and space for our garbage. What are some ways that you could live smaller? Take a minute to think about it, then type your answers in the chat box.
There's so many different ways. I can't wait to see what you all have to think. Yeah, definitely conserve water and fuel, eat less meat, buy less things, buy bulk. That's a good one I hadn't thought of recently. Recycling, yep, grow our food, ride bikes. Awesome, some really great ideas were coming in the chat, and feel free to add a few more if you're still working on one. Awesome, these are all great ideas. Very nice, thanks for sharing. And remember, as we're going through these few videos, feel free to use that Q&A box if you have any questions. I know you probably have questions about climate change, but if any questions arise as we're watching the video, we'll do our best to address them in just a few minutes. But go ahead and vote them up if you see questions already in the awesome ideas. Oh, just seeing the chat keep coming in. Awesome, love it. All right, well, let's continue with the next video chapter, and I'll give it a second to let those few more ideas come in. But we'll continue on with the next video chapter to learn a bit more about how we use fossil fuels and the connection to carbon dioxide or CO2. But I love all those thoughts coming in, folks.
understand the connection between fossil fuels and climate change, say hello to my little friend.
This is carbon dioxide, or CO2. Cute, right? CO2 is made when you create a little love connection between one carbon atom and two oxygen atoms. How do you do that?
By burning carbon. We burn sugar made of carbon in our bodies, so we breathe out CO2.
Burn a log, you get CO2.
See? Carbon is a main ingredient in life. So when you burn things that were once alive, you pull out its carbon and create CO2 that floats up into the air.
Coal, oil, and natural gas are called fossil fuels because they come from things that were alive long ago.
Wait, hold on. So coal was once alive? We've got to go way back for this one. 300 million years ago. You ready? Back then, the earth was warm and swampy. There were all sorts of giant trees and plants, kinds you've never seen. These plants breathed in CO2 from the air and captured the carbon in their bodies, releasing oxygen back into the atmosphere. When they died, a whole lot of them got buried deep underground. Under heat and pressure, the dead plants got cooked over millions of years. They turned into black rocks called coal. Pretty much the same thing happened in the oceans, except instead of plants, it was tiny plankton, massive amounts of them. They got buried and compressed, and millions of years later, they turned into black ooze called oil, and also pockets of gas called natural gas.
All this trapped trillions of tons of carbon underground.
Okay, fast forward to the 1800s. People found these fossil fuels and realized, whoa, when you burn this stuff, you get a huge amount of energy. By burning fossil fuels, we could, for the first time, power engines and machines, produce metals and concrete for building cities, run giant factories to make more stuff. Everything was faster and bigger. We started living large. Do you know that you can get more energy out of 1 gallon of gasoline than from 30 strong people working for a full day?
All that energy made what we know as modern life possible.
Fast forward to today, and the fossil fuel party is still going. Look around and you'll see signs of fossil fuels everywhere. Flip a switch, the electricity comes from wires that go out of your home and run all the way to a power plant. That plant probably burns coal or natural gas. Going for a drive? Most cars are powered by gasoline, which comes from oil. Taking a shower? The water's hot thanks to a water heater that probably uses electricity or burns natural gas. Even your food has fossil fuels in it. It's grown with fertilizer made from natural gas and transported in big trucks running on, yep, oil. We live in a fossil fuel world. About 80% of all the energy we use right now comes from fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have made life better for billions of people. But remember what we create when we burn them. Yep, CO2.
We take all this carbon that's been buried underground for millions of years, add oxygen, and there goes the CO2, right up into our atmosphere, where it will stay for up to 100 years.
And up there is where our search to understand climate change takes us next.
The video shared that 80% of the energy we use comes from fossil fuels. Let's have another poll question.
So 80% was fossil fuels, but after fossil fuels, what's the next highest energy source for the United States? What do you think? I see some battles going on again. All right, get your votes in. All right, final few moments, get those votes in. All right, we have quite a knowledgeable audience here. So, living in South Jersey, you can see all of these are probably familiar to you, but here, let me pull this down for now. The correct answer actually is nuclear, so great job, everyone. I'm very impressed. Let me just go ahead and pull. So it's likely that many of you have seen some of those alternative energy sources like solar, wind, and nuclear. So surprisingly, the correct answer is nuclear at about 8% of our energy across the whole United States. Now, if we were to add up all of those other renewable energy sources, it would get to about 11%. Yeah, right. I'm sure the nuclear power plant down in South Jersey are very familiar for some of you. But so learning more about where our energy comes from is critical to address climate change. And we have several summit sessions coming up over the next few weeks that focus on energy and how we can make more energy efficient choices and change our behaviors around decreasing our energy use. The great news is that as a nation, our renewable energy usage is rising and rising fast, which means our fossil fuel usage is also decreasing as well. These renewable energy sources have the least potential to negatively affect our climate because they don't release CO2. And that video really made it sound like CO2 is the bad guy, right? The culprit behind climate change. So what do you all think? Is it natural to have CO2? Should we just get rid of it all, right? Well, weigh in your ideas on this next poll about CO2. Let me head. There we go. All right, so should we, everyone, work to remove all the CO2 from our planet? You can vote yes or no. Yes, CO2 is causing terrible damage to our planet and we need to remove all of it from our atmosphere. Or no, CO2 helps our planet and we need to keep some of it in our atmosphere. Take your pick. Yes, get rid of it all, or no, we need to keep it. What do you all think? Let's see, get those final votes in. All right, we definitely have a smart crowd with us. So most of you selected no, CO2 helps our planet and we need to keep some of it in our atmosphere. So what do you think, Natasha?
CO2 actually is necessary for life on Earth and exists naturally. CO2 is essential for photosynthesis and keeps the Earth warm enough to allow life as we know it. However, too much CO2 can overwhelm the natural carbon cycle, changing the climate faster than life on Earth can adapt.
That's right, Natasha. Let's take a deeper look at that connection with our final video.
One of the main reasons we call this little planet home is because it has this really nice thin layer of air around it, called the atmosphere.
If the Earth was an apple, the atmosphere would be only as thick as its skin. But let's get a closer look.
Way closer. The atmosphere is made of gases, mostly nitrogen and oxygen. But sprinkled into the mix are special gases called greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane.
While greenhouse gases make up less than 1% of the atmosphere, they're what keeps the Earth from becoming a frozen wasteland.
Yeah, you see how these guys are small? They have just 2 atoms each. But greenhouse gases, like CO2, are beefier and more complex. As our planet gets warmed by the sun, heat is released from the Earth's surface and tries to escape into space. But the greenhouse gases are like, not so fast, buddy. Instead of letting the heat pass through, they trap it and send some of it back to Earth.
This is called the greenhouse effect. For billions of years, these gases have given Earth a kind of blanket that's kept it nice and warm.
They've made life possible. Thanks, guys.
But for us to continue to live here, that blanket can't get too thick.
Check out our next door neighbor, Venus. It's kind of balmy there. Like 880 degrees Fahrenheit on a good day.
Why? Because 97% of its atmosphere is made of CO2.
We've got this planet that's just right, with its nice light blanket. Oh, wait, what's all this floating in? More CO2. And we know where that's coming from. Burning fossil fuels.
Check this out. Scientists have studied ice core samples going back 800,000 years and found that carbon dioxide and global temperatures go up together, they go down together. It makes sense. The more CO2, the stronger the greenhouse effect, the warmer our planet gets.
For this entire time, CO2 levels have never gone above 300 parts per million, or ppm. That is until now. Where's CO2 today? Whoa, over 400 ppm for the first time in human existence.
Right here is where modern humans appeared on Earth. Right here is when we started burning fossil fuels.
You see how carbon dioxide levels are going through the roof? And they're still climbing. Compared to the last 800,000 years, we're now emitting CO2 100 times faster than ever measured before.
Since CO2 started spiking, our planet has definitely been heating up. That means there's more heat energy to fuel the Earth's climate system. The water cycle goes on overdrive, so weather becomes more extreme.
Climate change isn't a future problem. It's already started. We're breaking records left and right. In 2017, Arizona got so hot that the weather map ran out of colors.
Hurricane Harvey dumped so much rain on Houston that the rain maps had to come up with new colors too.
Dry places get drier. Wet places get wetter. Warm oceans expand and melting glaciers make sea levels rise even more.
What does this all mean for the US? Towns built on icy permafrost will just disappear. But even if you don't live in Alaska, maybe you live on a coast where rising sea levels could put your house underwater.
Does your hometown get heat waves? They're getting worse. In the east, we're seeing more destructive storms and hurricanes. Severe droughts and flash floods are ruining farmlands. Wildfires are getting way bigger.
Then there's the spread of diseases, like West Nile virus and Lyme disease. Not to mention pollen allergies get worse everywhere.
So yeah, it's serious for all of us.
Of course, we're not the only country on Earth. Small island nations are literally disappearing under the sea. 1/5 of Bangladesh is at risk of going underwater, which would force tens of millions of people to become climate refugees.
And while some have too much water, others have too little. Farmers in Africa are suffering from major droughts and are unable to grow food.
This is terrible stuff. It's really scary to think about.
Yeah, and while we're all at risk, many of the poorest people are being hit the hardest. Many live closest to the sources of pollution, and they have the least resources to protect themselves from the dirty air, extreme storms, and droughts.
That's really unfair, especially because they're creating much less CO2 than others.
But you know who else it's unfair to? You. Our generation didn't start this problem. We didn't choose to do nothing about it for decades, but we're the ones who are going to have to deal with it because we've got our whole lives ahead of us. The younger you are, the less you've contributed to this problem, but the longer you're going to be facing it.
In fact, lots of young people's lives have already been affected by climate change. Let's meet a few of them.
Wow, those are some really serious impacts from climate change. Have any of you seen the impacts from climate change around your area? Feel free to share what you've noticed in the chat now.
Yeah, wacky weather, bad storms, different birds, lobsters moving north. Yeah, drastic weather changes. Hail in the summer. Yeah, we've had some really severe storms really lately. Let's see, I missed some of them. More tornadoes, more severe weather. Yeah, all this extra heat in our atmosphere just adds more energy, right? Because heat is a form of energy. If your science teacher hasn't taught you that yet, I'm sure they will. But this extra energy in our atmosphere, in our Earth system, just causes all this extra crazy, wacky weather, as we all kind of were talking about. Saturated soils, right? And some of the problems with that saturation is that it's not just fresh water, right? It's salt water is coming in. Awesome. More tropical diseases, mosquitoes, West Nile, absolutely. Yeah. Oops, sorry, I'll give you a few more minutes to see if there's anything else coming in. Okay, there are lots. I'm sure you're still thinking. Feel free to keep adding if you want to the chat. Yeah, recently the snow on top of snow. I was reading that this is one of the few Februarys that we have the possibility that we will have snow cover the entire month of February. Very unusual, but it just, you know, kind of comes and goes, and when those weather systems come, we get dumped on by the snow. But yeah, so these are it really is a problem for all of us across our state, our country, and our world.
And an especially important problem for my generation. Our generation too.
But there are lots of people, and especially lots of young people like Natasha here, and like probably many of you in the audience, who can have a positive impact on this very serious situation. Before we move on from this quick review of the science behind climate change, I want to take a minute to ask, what questions do you still have? So I see we had, I think we have one in the Q&A box already that we can take a minute to talk about, but I'll give you a minute if anybody else still has a question. I know there's so many questions around climate change, but if you have any that kind of relate to what we've been talking about, please feel to put it in the Q&A box now. All right, so I'm seeing 2 questions so far. All right, a couple more questions coming in. Great. So the first question I'm going to tackle is climate change, or this idea of heat, the same as global warming? And while very technically speaking, they are not the same, because global warming is only talking about warming. Climate change is just reflecting that our climates are changing. And remember, weather is climate is the clothes that you have in your closet that you might, keep and own, but weather is the clothes that you put on for any one day in particular. So if we were only ever warming, you could just wear all your summer clothes all the time. But because we have these variations in our climate, it is a little bit different. But many times we use that term global warming when we mean climate change. And climate change has kind of been the more accepted term now. How do you know about climate change? Well, the video talked about some of those pieces of evidence. I'm sure I'm going to take a moment to think back. So they talked about ice cores. So ice cores are a really interesting way that they can go up and core and literally like take like a cylinder of ice from millions of years ago and kind of test the air samples in it and see how much CO2 was in the air in these little trapped bubbles in the ice from a long, long time ago up until now. Other ways that we have evidence for climate change include our atmospheric measurements that we're taking from all around the world. We also have evidence from our, what we call the Paleo Climate, which you can probably put those 2 words together and figure out what it means, but like climate from long ago. So we're seeing evidence from fossils, from tree rings, from ocean sediments, from the coral reef, being able to drill down and see different samples, rocks, even plant leaves. So, you probably have heard about photosynthesis, right? So photosynthesis, the leaves in the plant have little holes to bring in the air. And depending on how much CO2 is in our atmosphere, there's actually different numbers of holes in the leaves called the stomata. And so based on how concentrated the CO2 is, we can look at old leaves and determine how much CO2 is in the air. So we have lots of different ways of figuring out that climate change absolutely is happening, and we have evidence from a number of different sources. All right, Natasha, you want to take that one next? I see. what are ways that we can help out with climate change? You want to take that one, Natasha?
All right, yes, definitely. So especially when you're around this age, middle school, high school, there are some really challenging ways to take on climate change because since the beginning, people have been telling you, oh, you just have to wait until you're older, or you just have to wait until an adult can help you out with it. But as kids and as teenagers, we are able to help out with climate change right now. Some easy ways you can help out is to stop burning as many fossil fuels. So carpooling with your friends or riding your bikes more, like people were saying in the chat earlier. Using ways of transportation that does not emit as much CO2 into the atmosphere. It is an amazing and really simple way you can help, or taking public transportation if you're in an area that offers. Another way to help with climate change is one of the biggest parts that I've been seeing people do is really just going around their own homes and advocating for it and telling their parents who, like, even if you are not leaving the house, your parents might be going to work every day, and maybe telling them, being like, hey, I don't know if you know about global warming or you know about climate change, but emitting as many fossil fuels and CO2, as much CO2 as you are into the atmosphere can be dangerous for me and for your future as well when you're hopefully taking care of your parents later on, or they're in retirement homes, or however it may be. Going up to them with these facts will obviously show them that you have been researching into it, but also show them that you know what you're talking about, and they'll start taking you more seriously on that. So really advocating for climate change yourself, and also taking away by taking public transportation and carpooling as a little bit more will be great ways to help limit climate change and start helping out with it now. When you become older, there's obviously going to be more ways. So you'll start driving, let's say if you're in middle school or you're not old enough to drive yet, you'll start driving and you'll start wanting to drive a lot more. But you'll see that damage to the environment and the atmosphere will be detrimental. So definitely limiting yourself as well if you are at the age of driving, or if you like to hang out with your friends a lot. Walk, ride your bikes together. My friends and I love to ride our bikes in the summertime. So that's one of the biggest ways I can say for younger students like ourselves to help out with this climate change and help out with this issue.
Absolutely. And Natasha, in that response, kind of answered one of the other questions too, for thinking about, are there ways for people to help at home due to COVID? So absolutely, there are ways, whether it's talking about advocacy, where we are talking about be better informed yourself. There was a question about affecting animals, absolutely affecting animals. We can give you more evidence, but I'm being told that we need to be moving on. The one last question that I want to address really fast is the idea is, do our individuals' actions matter? And I want to resoundingly say, yes, they do. So you can absolutely have an impact. Some of the energy choices that we make, or the choices we make to conserve our fossil fuel use, absolutely can have an impact. Now, that's not to say that, me not using a straw one day is going to change the world, but by continuing to have good practices and share those good practices with others and advocate for even larger scale action, we absolutely can have an impact. All right. Now I'm going to pass it back to Natasha to close up. So thank you so much for those questions. We will save that. Oh, I'm sorry, Natasha. We will save all of these questions. And as we are collecting resources to share out with all the attendees, we will try to address these in more detail. So thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone for your amazing questions. Next, I have the pleasure to introduce Caroline Lewis, founder and senior climate advisor for the Clio Institute, which is dedicated to climate change education and advocacy. They are based in Miami, Florida, and work with youth across Florida to build climate literacy and mobilize climate action. In 2012, Caroline was recognized by the White House as a champion of change for climate resiliency. And in 2019, she was highlighted as one of the 31 most influential people in the South by Time magazine. Thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today.
It is my pleasure. I am so proud of New Jersey. I have a little bit of New Jersey envy right now. So I am in Miami, Florida. Originally, I am from Port of Spain, Trinidad, which is one of the Caribbean islands down at the bottom of the chain of islands, right off the coast of Venezuela. And I never in my life dreamt, when I was your age, that I would have the mouth I have and the platform I have to advocate for climate action. And so what I would love to do, to just take a minute, is to thank your teachers, to thank the state of New Jersey, your absolutely informed governor and first lady. We would like to do a little swap with Florida whenever you're interested. But it's so important that we realize it's the individual action, but it's also policy and political will to help change it. So it's everything. I consider us hamsters on wheels, and every wheel turning is important as long as we're all turning in the same direction. So before I begin giving you some ideas and some stories of how young people have inspired me and some of the things they have done, because I hope in the next 20, 25 minutes, when you listen to me, you will realize that you could do a lot of things as part of this climate summit, as part of your challenge, and as part of working with a group. What you need to do is think about, what do I want to target? What issue is really bothering me? You also want to target, what strategy could I use? Yes, it's COVID time, so it has to be remote for most part, but think beyond COVID too, because this is going to be an annual challenge, and you can think bigger and scale in future years. So very quickly, on a scale of 1 to 10, teachers and students, if you had to rate yourself on your climate literacy, how much you understand climate change and the science that was just shared by Natasha, which was so awesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, how informed are you on the science, the seriousness, and the solutions of climate change? And if you could just type a number into the chat, 1 being, I know nothing, I hear people are concerned and I don't know why. 10 being, I know everything, I'm a published climate scientist, and I could tell you what's happening from parts per million all the way down to ocean acidification. So what grade would you give yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? I see some answers coming in. You guys are pretty good. And that's why I'm so proud of New Jersey. Look at all of these 7s and 8s. Whoa. All right, I love it. Keep it up. I gotta tell you, I've been doing this exclusively for 12 years, Clio Institute. And I am a science teacher and a high school principal by trade. So I'm steeped in this. And I give myself a 6.5 because I know how much I don't know of the nitty gritty. But I would give myself 8 if I were you, and I got everything Natasha just went through with you. Okay, second scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, on your climate engagement. That means how much do you talk about climate and the need for action and your concern about parts per million and what adaptation and mitigation your state, your county, your city, your neighborhood is doing. 1 being, I know nothing, leave me alone, I am an island. 10 is, I don't shut up about climate change. I speak to everybody who says hello to me about it. I am like white noise. My family doesn't even want me around at Thanksgiving. What grade would you give yourself on your climate engagement, talking about it? 1 to 10. Let's see some answers. All right, we got some Carolines in the crowd. I'm about an 11 or a 12 here. They see me coming and they know what's going to come out of my mouth, because when I see a challenge, I'm from Trinidad. I don't throw up my hands and walk away. I roll up my sleeves. I want to take this on. So with that, I'd like to share some PowerPoint slides that hopefully give you some ideas. And if you're taking notes, I would like you to jot down some ideas that come up. So I'm going to share screen now. There we go. You get to see my very dirty desktop. All right, can you all see that? Yep. So part of what I am known for is really embracing the power of young people. I think I have gotten all those accolades from the White House and from Time Magazine because I have been inspired by young people. And I have taken their call to action very, very seriously. The best thing I ever heard was when high schoolers were participating in one of my programs, and they came and they hugged me and they thanked me and they said, you know, Miss Lewis, because of you, I feel important and needed in my community. Wow. Well, guess what, folks, you are important and needed in your community. In founding the Clio Institute in 2010, we wanted to make sure that everybody was at the table. We're a nonprofit. Every penny we raise goes back into the programs. We're educational and we're nonpartisan and we're science-based. So we take the science straight from the scientists and the scientific organizations. We do see the urgency. We see that it is crucially important that we act now. You've heard people talk about the 9 years we have before we lose any hope of stopping this train from being a train wreck. Well, it doesn't mean in 9 years' time we're all going to burn up, but it means that if we don't start turning the ship now, it's not going to be able to be turned. So I stress the urgency with which I want you to embrace this challenge. I want you to see yourself as an engineer and an optimist. You're going to get pessimistic as you learn more of the science. That's inevitable because it's heartbreaking. However, if you are solution oriented and you see yourself as an optimist that believes that we can do this, and an engineer that can think of strategy to get the solutions going, then you'll be part of the crowd. Here in Miami, we are on the streets protesting because we want climate education in our schools. New Jersey, you have it. And we are so proud of you. You are leading the 50 states, and we hope we can be very close behind. I see a resilient Florida program happening, and I think that we can jump on that bandwagon and use you as our role model. So this whole student climate challenge is calling on you in little groups to take on some way of being a leader. And I want you to sink yourself into these student sessions that are coming up. There's a range of topics that they're planning for you, and each one is important. Each of us has a soft spot for the things that impress us or worry us. You have to find your passion and then get into it. As was pointed out earlier, it's not just about sea level rise or extreme heat. We have to help people connect the dots to all of these disruptions that are here and coming. I usually ask people with this slide, if I were to give you $5 billion and ask you to donate that money to one of these disruptions, which would you pick and why? And you could think about that, students, because it might help you figure out your project. If you don't have an answer, I'm going to ask you again at the end of this presentation. So think about it. In the session just before this, they talked about this quote, that our clever brain and our human heart must work together. That's from Jane Goodall. She's one of my heroes who saw a problem and went after it and did an amazing thing. I want all the teachers and all the students listening here to know that it's not just science, that we have to bring in the social sciences, the creative arts, the philosophy, the religion. We're going to need all disciplines working on ways to reach every nook and cranny of our communities so that we can develop ways for having people understand the seriousness of climate change and embrace the biggest, baddest solutions. I also want to remind everybody that this planet is, like Natasha said, we're like Goldilocks. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right because of the atmospheric composition. But we're changing that, and we're changing it too quickly and in the wrong direction. The Paris Agreement in 2015, when every country in the world just about made a pledge to reduce greenhouse gases, I slept for the first time. I slept well. And I want you to know this. Every pledge that came out in 2015, when we looked at the numbers and we crunched those numbers, it wasn't enough to keep us from warming above 1.5 or even 2 degrees, but it was a start. And why it's important for America to be back in the Paris Agreement now with the new administration and to lead it is because the universities around the world took on this Paris Agreement and worked to develop accelerator hubs to help every single country, especially developing countries, get to their greenhouse gas reduction goals faster. That is music to my ears. So when you're thinking of strategies, I want you to think of, do you want to do something to adapt to help New Jersey get stronger because of sea level rise and warming worlds and erratic weather? Do you want to be a part of New Jersey's mitigation, where you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions by switching away from oil, coal, and gas? Do you want to focus on the justice and equity lens? Because as we were told earlier, this climate change is a threat multiplier to all the social justice issues we worry about. We tell people in Miami all the time, you've got to prepare for a hurricane. Well, 57% of Miami-Dade County, where I live, are either poor or working poor. When you tell them prepare for a hurricane, they don't have the means with which to do that. So we have to keep that equity lens in front of us, and New Jersey is no exception. Also, quick review. Mitigation is a strategy or solution to address what's causing climate change, reducing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The main thing is renewable energy and clean energy like nuclear, if it's done safely. Adaptation is a strategy, a solution to address the effects of climate change, like seawalls, if they would help. You want to build seawalls, raising roads in low-lying area. That would be adaptation. And then justice. In New Jersey, I looked up the ALICE reports for you. I don't know if you've ever heard of ALICE, but you should. The ALICE reports are put out by the United Way, and it's a way of us finding out how many people in our state, in our community, are working poor. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. So that's people working paycheck to paycheck and unable to handle even one crisis in a month where the car breaks down or medical illness happens that's not covered, and so on. In the state of New Jersey, 10% of your population is at the federal poverty level. An additional 27% are ALICE. That's based on the 2018 report. So between both percentages, 37% of New Jersey is either poor or working poor. And how they deal with trying to solve the climate crisis in their backyard is different. So we have to be sensitive to that. This color range shows you the percentage in New Jersey that's below ALICE, below the working poor. And you have clearly counties or regions within New Jersey that are hurting more than others. I want you to be aware of that as you pick your topic for your challenge option that's coming up, and you have to be entered by March, I think. This is a great example of all three things. We have shade for the cars, so that's adaptation to a warming world. We have solar powers, so that's mitigation, where we're mitigating greenhouse gases by using renewable energy. And this would be a justice issue if these solar panels were part of a green jobs initiative in New Jersey, where the working poor was trained at community colleges to be able to install these things and earn some income. So I want you to think of all three: adaptation, mitigation, and justice as you come up with your idea. So you need today to think about, what issue in the climate crisis am I going to target? Is it going to be renewable energy, biodiversity loss, more access to air conditioning and water heat in the winter? Am I going to be worried about population displacement and what to do with people who have to relocate because they're on low ground or unable to grow food? What opportunity, what strategy will I use? Am I the type to create a petition? Do I want to take on an education role where I create a website or a contest or something for people? Do I want to encourage performances that talk about the problem of the climate crisis? Do I want to do a call to action for the New Jersey elected officials or anybody else? Who do I want to partner with? The city, the county, the state, the PTA, student government, colleges, and universities. And if you could create a table like this with 3 columns, what issue am I interested in? What strategy would I like to use? And what partners can I drum up? You'll be able to come out of this conversation with me ready to dive in to this challenge. One of the best aspects of mitigation is solutions come from Project Drawdown. If you've not heard of Project Drawdown, make a note of it. It's a research-based list of the 100 top solutions to reducing greenhouse gases. And I've listed the top 10 here. So there are solutions, there are research, I think something like 3 million data points were used to come up with this list in Drawdown. Their website is amazing. So you can get some ideas there. You can say, I am part of mitigation because I'm promoting plant-rich diets. Or you could say, I'm going to work on educating women and girls because that is having a worldwide effect on drawing down greenhouse gases. Reducing food waste is essential. We have to acknowledge if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Something like 40% of the food in our country goes into food waste. We have to eat more plant-based meals. The less we depend on animal agriculture, the better for our climate. And I know the cows get a bad rap because of their methane release, but I want you all to know it's not from farting, it's from burping. So leave the cows alone. Understand that we all need to eat less meat. If you can go meatless, good for you. But if you can't go meatless, at least eat less of it. When I first proposed to my husband that we go meatless Mondays, he looked at me and he goes, listen, Caroline. And now we're doing it and so much more. So take a small step and do something. Or create a campaign to get your family to do it. That can be part of your project. So the goal is not to have a perfect environmentalist out of every single person we meet, but to get everybody to be imperfect, but to be an environmentalist and to take sustainable actions every day. Like Dr. Drewes answered that question, what can we do? What little old me can do? It all adds up. It all adds up for all of us. Climate justice. Do you know that federal policy does not require air-conditioned units in public housing? They require heat, but not AC. And we have this problem in Miami with 57% of the people working paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have working air conditioning. So are we going to see a headline talking about that? If you were in Florida, I would encourage those of you who want to do a big thing to petition the government to include air conditioning in every single public housing project. It should not be an option, it should be required in a warming world. We have to be careful and understanding that the inequity in the climate impact is a lot of it to do with costs. By 2030, 9 out of 10 of the major crops will have some change in its growth rate and productivity, and therefore prices will increase. What does that mean? Do you want to take on a project that helps low-income families grow their own vegetables in their backyard? That could be awesome. So that's the type of thing I want you to think about. I also want you to think about immigration. It's an unequal world. Central and South America, but largely Africa, Asia, are going to have the biggest impacts of food insecurity in the changing climate. Where do you think all these people are going to want to go? So we have to come up with an immigration plan that works. At the Clio Institute, we believe in the power of young people. Greta Thunberg completely inspired us. We became Greta followers. We also looked for our American leaders. We have a lot of youth leaders in our country who are unapologetic in demanding change, and good for them, good for you. Be a part of it. We had 21 plaintiffs ages 12 to 23 suing the US government in Juliana versus the United States. If you're not sure about that, look it up. It's an incredible case and it's not over yet. So in Miami-Dade County, one of the things that our young people, our high schoolers and middle schoolers decided to do is to get cities and the county to declare a climate emergency. So we created a lot of noise, a lot of strikes. This is just pre-COVID. And we got an audience in front of the Miami Beach Chamber, and we spoke to them about this climate emergency. And a few weeks later, they declared a climate emergency. This was the student-led strike that happened September 20th, 2019. That's in response to Greta calling for a worldwide youth strike, and we were a part of it. This mob here was completely organized by our Gen Clio leaders. Gen Clio is our youth movement where we're building a generation of climate leaders. They organized the permit for the march. They organized the school buses to get some people there. They organized the speaker lineup, the speakers, everything. And this is the group that went up to speak to the Miami Beach Council to get them to pass an emergency declaration. Well, you know what happens when one big city does the right thing? All the others want to do the same. So we have 7 or 8 cities now that have declared climate emergencies. But during this rally, where the kids were chanting, what do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. And they were really very impactful. One young girl, she was maybe, I don't know, 10, 11, was tugging at my shirt because I think she knew I was part of the Clio Institute organizing this. And she goes, "Miss, can I speak?" And I said, "Well, what do you want to speak about, honey?" And she said, "My future." So I took her up, here she is. I took her up to the students with the microphones and I said, "She wants to speak." And they gave her the microphone. So if your project is something that gives other people the microphone, a chance to find their voice and share their voice on the climate crisis, you'll be doing a lot of good. We also took our Gen Clio movement and created a House on Fire podcast that interviews young people and is getting really good acclaim. This is a young family of 4 siblings in Miami that were so tired of food waste that they developed a composting alternative for people who cannot compost. They pick up the food waste from them and they compost them. They are really putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak. We have this coming up. I'd like to invite you to it. It's in April. It's a Miami Youth Climate Summit. It's all virtual. But if you Google Miami Youth Climate Summit, you will find out more information and maybe be able to get involved. It's completely student run and it's pretty incredible. We also have the youth screening of The Invisible Hand, March 13th and 14th. The Invisible Hand is like the rights of nature in this climate fight. Who speaks for the rivers and the forests and the trees? So this should be an incredible show. So I want to end with this. You can do anything you want as part of your challenge. You cannot do everything. So pick your issue, pick your strategy, and find your partners. You may decide a petition, a climate emergency declaration, a justice issue, greenhouse gas inventories are part of what you want to advocate for. You may choose to educate, form a climate leadership group in your school, create a website, figure out a way to reach younger kids on this climate crisis, work with families or PTAs, engage others, host a webinar or a contest or a tweet-a-thon, talk about food, heat, and health vulnerability as well if you want. Share your voice. Maybe write a song. Maybe you'll go viral. Who knows? I'm going to read about some of you on TikTok. Poetry slams, podcast, a skit, Oh, that's a typo. That should say a blog. So all of you need to figure out the issue you want to target and the strategy you want to use. And I'm sure between today and the rest of the summit, where you are exposed to all of these sessions, you will come up with the right issue and the right strategy for you. That's where I was born, Port of Spain, Trinidad. It's not going to be around, not looking like that. That mountain range in the back is what I'm trying to get them to develop, because the low-lying areas ain't going to cut it. I try to tell everybody, like the COVID virus, the people in Trinidad and Tobago, the people in Miami, New Jersey, Newfoundland, people in Australia, New Zealand were all experiencing the COVID virus and reacting differently. But it's the same thing about climate. We all are in the same storm, and we have to figure out a way to pull each other out. Philosophically, we need to embrace what the Dalai Lama has said, that the future of humanity depends on our planet, and the future of the planet very much depends on humanity. We're giving you a big task, young people. We created the problem, and we need your help to solve it. You are important and needed. And the only people who will change the world are people like you and me, who are crazy enough to think that we can change the world. The power of young people continues to inspire me. And I know it's scary, because I believe that life is indeed like a roller coaster with ups and downs. But it's our choice. Do we want to scream or enjoy the ride? I say we do both. And with that, I will ask you to leave me some questions you would like me to answer. But I hope I have inspired you to think about what your role could be in this climate challenge, and how proud you should be of the state of New Jersey for having this pilot. And I can only wish it an annual success every year. I am here for you, and thank you so very much. So I guess we will wait for questions and answers, and we will take those on.
Yeah, so we just had a question in the Q&A. It's a little bit more of a logistical question about the contest. So the contest, we're going to talk a little, Natasha's going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but yeah, unless you want to take it, or I can just do it real quick. So the contest will open mid-March, about March 15th, and contest submissions will be due in June, on June 11th. Lots and lots more information will be coming out about that. But you can kind of think about these next 4 weeks of the summit sessions to really be educating you about, you know, what kind of projects you can get involved with, and then get rolling with those projects in March. And we're excited to see what you're able to come up with. And like I said, Natasha will be sharing a bit more information about that. And throughout these next 4 weeks of the summit, we'll be talking even more about it. But let's see, any other questions? I'm looking in the chat or the Q&A. Any questions for Caroline?
Do we have to go to all the summit sessions? Yes, you do. Every one of them. I don't know.
So the short answer to that is we encourage you to, as Caroline just kind of alluded to, with regard to, are you required to? For our perspective, no. You may need to talk with your teachers about what their expectations are. As a former teacher, I don't want to speak for them. I know they have their own expectations for your level of participation. All of our sessions are being recorded, so if anyone has a time conflict with these sessions in the future, they will be posted on the bit.ly site, which links to the Sustainable Jersey for Schools website, and we'll drop that link in the chat again. But all of the subsequent sessions, the sessions that start, and Natasha's going to talk a little bit more about them, they only run from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., with the exception of the closing session, which also runs from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Got it.
Other questions for Caroline?
Well, we did well on time. No questions. That's great.
Okay, well,
I hope you have a lot of ideas.
if any come in, I'm sure we can connect with Caroline and get her to address them. But I think now maybe we will go ahead and toss it over to Natasha. Oh, I see there's one last one coming in. There is a student session on Friday, and that schedule will be posted very soon.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the amazing questions. We really appreciate that. And thank you, Caroline, for sharing your important, inspiring work with us. I agree that we are all so important and needed in our communities. And as you said, we as a state are leading the nation in the amount of action that we are taking right now to slow down the effects of climate change. So go ahead and give you all of yourselves a pat on the back, because just by being here today, right now, you are helping combat climate change, and you will be able to go on and advocate for these issues. So some points I just wanted to highlight from Caroline's amazing presentation. One thing about your project, most of the South Jersey states South Jersey counties where we live in, we were towards the higher percentages of being towards the working poor or under the ALICE lines, so poor. So that's something big that you want to take into consideration when you start to think about your project. Maybe we won't be able to do some of the more costly things like putting solar panels on everyone's houses, just because that is something that people can economically be able to struggle with. That does not mean that there is no way, absolutely impossible, that you will be able to come up with a project idea, but you just have to think about the cost to your community and to your schools when thinking about your project. Project Drawdown is definitely something I would research into. I was looking into it while Caroline was speaking earlier, and it had amazing solutions for how to eliminate greenhouse gases. Like she said, there's amazing research behind it, and there's so many different ways and forms from different types of price ranges, different types of availabilities, different types of ages can participate in, all types of ages can participate in. So you can use that to definitely plan your climate projects for March and start getting, your gears turning in your head. For example, Meatless Mondays. So that's something, in my opinion, that's pretty easy to implement, as well as like even bigger companies are starting to do it. Like, I don't know if you guys are as familiar as I am with Starbucks, but I do have the app. I have so many stars on there, and they have Meatless Mondays in their stores worldwide. So it's amazing the things that we are being able to change personally as our generation. Starbucks, in my personal opinion, is kind of something geared towards millennials and Gen Z as we are. So being able to participate in Meatless Mondays, whether or not it be your entire family, hopefully your entire community can, but that's just something I think is very easy to implement, in my opinion. Students can come together and make a change, legal changes, protests, and you want to give other people the microphone. You are here to help start the revolution almost. And you want to make more people become included and become empowered like you are hopefully all being today. I hope you all take this time to think about what you can do for not only yourself, but your community, your state, your nation, your world. And you want to take that and just give other people the microphone, like Caroline mentioned earlier. You want to help people advocate themselves as well and continue to bring the outburst of necessary information and scientific facts to your families and your friends, and then continue that ripple effect. There are so many different ways to start. You can advocate, educate, engage, and share your voice is so important, in my opinion. Advocating with starting petitions, socially distant protests. There have been socially distant protests going on in wide open areas outside. The weather's starting to get a little bit, or hopefully it'll start getting a little bit warmer sooner. So being able to protest outside and make people hear your voice. Email your local governments, state government, national governments, whoever you can reach out to, email them and share your interest in climate change policies. Get your friends to email them, get your clubs to email them. Everyone coming together and making a change will only make them hear us more. Educating people, starting Zoom calls and creating presentations to share with your schools, with your classes, with your friends and family. Starting informational social media accounts are super easy and so accessible to anyone who really has internet access and some time on their hands. I mean, I know I go on TikTok, I go on Instagram all the time, and you see all these new posts being shared on people's stories, on people's posts being talking about what are different ways to take impact from your home. What are different, how climate change is currently affecting us in different aspects that will affect us in the future. So just taking that platform, making it your own, and going ahead and advocating for others is a huge impact that will eventually contact more and more people. Engaging new people, starting a new club in your school, teaming up with your schools, like your school government, or even your PTA, like Caroline mentioned. I think these are amazing ways that you can go ahead and advocate to other people in your school that you might not have known otherwise. This issue of climate change kind of unifies and brings us all together, and you want to continue to deepen that unity. It's because all together with our numbers, we will be able to do anything. Share your voice, like Caroline said, probably one of my favorite things. Create a beautiful piece of artwork, paint something, start a podcast, do what makes you happy, because that will have the biggest impact on people. We're not only crazy enough to think that we can change the world, but we're crazy enough to know that we can change the world. So I know that you guys will definitely take these ideas and run with them in whatever possible way you can. Be creative, be artistic, put it all on the line. I know you guys will do amazing with these projects. So I hope you're all able to learn something new about our world and how it's quickly evolving, and enjoyed our speakers as much as I did. More importantly, I hope you will all go home and start to share this information with others, as well as use it to find your why. This summit will cover a wide range of topics related to climate change. And as a reminder, here's a list of upcoming student sessions currently being shown on the screen. And there are also sessions listed specifically for teachers. If you want to keep these student sessions, you can also take a screenshot. For teachers, you can also feel free to take a screenshot of the screen. So you're able to keep these and put them in your calendar for later. All right, and as you participate in the sessions, think about the issues that are more relevant and important to you and what you can do to address it. The closing plenary will highlight steps students can take to plan a climate action project. The climate contest is designed to support you and your efforts and gain recognition for your accomplishments, so you can set ablaze the flame for others to go out on their own and do their own projects. One final note is that the climate change is the climate challenge is a pilot project that the partners hope to roll out statewide next year. So your feedback will be critical in ensuring its ongoing success. After each session, you will be asked for feedback, and we would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete the survey. Thank you all again for attending today, and we look forward to your ongoing participation over the next 4 weeks. Please note that registration for the summit will remain open, so if others in your school or district want to join, please visit this website that will be posted on the screen. All right, yeah, please visit the website linked in the chat. And if you have any questions about the summit, please reach out to the email that will be listed on the slide or be put in the chat by Dr. Drewes. Thank you all so much for attending once again, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.